Hello, and welcome to episode 14 of the ShopLogic podcast. I am your host, Adrienne. What is ShopLogic? It is all things pertaining to ethical consumerism. On this podcast, I discuss mindful consumerism, conscious consumerism, whatever you'd like to call it. It's your source to learn how what we buy affects you, others, animals, and the planet. ShopLogic is a website, an app, the podcast you're listening to, and soon to be an ethical brand certifier. It's a database to answer all of your questions about all the things we shop for. Together, we'll learn how to buy better, read labels, be aware of how purchases impact our health, the environment, animals, and laborers. I discuss anything and everything we shop for, which includes food, personal care products, cosmetics, fashion, and much, much more. On this podcast, you're going to learn how you can shop guilt-free, know which brands to choose, and which make a positive impact on animals, people, and the planet. If you think about it, everything we buy, every single thing is going to positively or negatively impact something or someone in some way. On this podcast, my goal is to help you learn something you didn't know, something that is useful and interesting, and I also learn as well as I prepare the episodes that you listen to. I decide which topics to create, I try to make them relevant themes, and decide what is info that is worth sharing. So get ready to discover some tips, tricks, hacks, and fun facts. And I guarantee you on this podcast episode, you will learn something you did not know before, maybe a simple solution to apply to your everyday life. The ultimate goal is learning together how to buy better. So on today's podcast, the theme is animal entertainment. I know you might be thinking, well, how is that relevant to ethical shopping, ethical consumerism? So it's not just things that we buy, it's also events, activities, things that we do. It's something we're putting our money towards. So, animal entertainment. The Kentucky Derby is just around the corner. It is on May 2nd. So I'm going to discuss horse racing, also horse carriages, circuses, rodeos, and bullfighting, exotic animal rides, and tourism pertaining to elephants, camels, tigers. And don't worry, it's not going to get too negative because my goal is to leave you with alternatives, solutions, and how we are making progress today. It's really useful info to know because there are a lot of animal entertainment activities that we participate in and maybe don't really think twice about the impact it's having. If you're an ethical consumer concerned with animal welfare, understanding the animal entertainment industry is crucial because it intersects deeply with both ethical and welfare considerations. So, to understand the scope of the animal entertainment industry, it's going to include any sector where animals are used primarily for human amusement. This could be things like zoos and aquariums, circuses and traveling shows, theme parks with animal attractions, like those marine parks or safari parks that you go to maybe when you're on vacation, racing and performance events like horse racing with the Kentucky Derby, greyhound racing, dog shows, and dolphin shows, film, TV, and advertising that use live animals for production. And thankfully today I'm seeing more and more artificially generated animals in movies and TV and film and on commercials. So thankfully they are making progress with that. But the animal welfare concerns, when they do still use real animals, the animals are often going to experience some physical harm. The training methods may include coercion, punishment, or deprivation, and there can be limited space and enclosures that causes them to feel physical stress or injury. Performance demands can lead to exhaustion, malnutrition, or repetitive stress injuries. And there's also psychological stress. The confinement or unnatural social groupings can trigger anxiety, aggression, and depression. And yes, even animals can feel those things just like we do as people. Maybe they're deprived of their natural animal instincts and behaviors like hunting, swimming, and roaming, which can lead to stereotypic behaviors like pacing, swaying, and over-grooming. Also, their lifespan and natural life cycle is interfered. Captive breeding for entertainment can alter natural life cycles. Many animals are removed from the wild or bred in captivity for show purposes. And some practices to watch. Circuses. Most major animal circuses have been criticized for cruel training techniques. Some countries countries, thankfully, have banned wild animals in circuses altogether. Marine parks, if you remember going to SeaWorld, for instance, you might have seen orcas and dolphins in captivity, and they actually live shorter lives than they normally would because of the behavioral stress that the shows cause compared to living among their wild populations. Even in zoos and aquariums, these reputable institutions do focus on conservation and enrichment, but some still prioritize entertainment and profit over the welfare of their creatures. So some guidelines for ethical consumption. We all love animals. We all care about animals. Unless you are crazy, everyone is an animal lover. So some practices. Avoid entertainment that exploits animals. So any of the live shows featuring exotic animals, circuses, marine parks, activities involving direct human to wildlife interaction for profit. This might even be things like photo ops, rides, and petting zoos with wild and exotic species. There are some ethical alternatives. Sanctuaries and rescue centers are a great solution. These are places where animals cannot be released into the wild for whatever reason, and they're cared for without having to perform. Conservation-focused zoos and aquariums, they might be accredited by organizations like the World Association of Zoos and Aquariums, WAZA, which meet high welfare and enrichment standards, wildlife tourism that observes animals in their natural habitats responsibly. How do you feel about zoos and aquariums? I know that it's a fun family activity. However, I always got a not so easy feeling going to the zoos and aquariums because I would place myself in the shoes, so to speak, of the animals in captivity and notice and observe it doesn't feel natural. They do look stressed out or depressed or anxious, and it just created like an uneasy feeling. I do know that there is a lot of conservation effort made, but there is just something so unnatural, especially the giant ones like elephants and giraffes and lions and gorillas that are meant to roam literally across the African continent in packs and herds of like dozens and dozens of their own kind in families and groups. But instead, there's just a few of them and they're captive, and like the space that they're in is not even that big. And then they've got all these people and kids standing around pointing and looking at them and taking pictures. It just seems like a spectacle that is creating enjoyment for the people at the cost of the animal suffering. Here are some red flags to look for: small or barren enclosures, animals performing unnatural tricks or stunts. That makes me think of like the circus, lack of enrichment or visible signs of stress, limited or no transparency about sourcing, breeding, and welfare standards. The safest path is to prioritize wildlife observation in natural settings, reputable sanctuaries, or accredited conservation-focused institutions, and avoid supporting entertainment that profits from performing or confined animals. There are a ton of sanctuaries. I think this is really overlooked. What's great about going to a sanctuary is that they are typically nonprofit, and if there's an entry fee, then that money is going towards supporting the animals for food, for grooming, for the land that they're living on. They are in an environment that is trying to make it as natural as possible. They are not worked, they're not exploited, they are trying to live their best lives. And a lot of times the sanctuary animals are in a sanctuary because they were rescues. Why is the Kentucky Derby and horse racing and horse carriages, why is all of that bad for animal welfare? Let's start with the Kentucky Derby. It's known as the most exciting 2 minutes in sports. It's a legendary American horse race held every year on the first Saturday in May at Churchill Downs in Louisville. It's not just a race, it's a full-on spectacle of speed, fashion, tradition, and a bit of chaos. If you're not familiar with the Kentucky Derby, there are thousands of people that dress in pastel suits, and women wear these extravagant hats. Everyone's sipping on cocktails, and the crowd roars as 20 thoroughbreds explode out of the gate. The history of the Kentucky Derby is that it dates back to 1875, inspired by England's famous Epsom Derby, and it was founded by Meriwether Lewis Clark Jr. Yeah, related to Lewis and Clark. It has run almost every year since, even through wars and the Great Depression. So it is one of the longest continuously held sporting events in the US. It is a tradition that people do not want to break. I'm from Kentucky and people get really serious about the Derby every single year. Some traditions that make it iconic: the Run for the Roses. So the winning horse is draped in a blanket of 554 red roses. I don't know why that number, but that's why the Derby is nicknamed the Run for the Roses. The mint julep is the official drink, and if you've never had one, they actually are really delicious. It is a mix of bourbon, sugar, water, ice, and mint, and believe it or not, about 120,000 are served each year. So people get really festive. They play the song My Old Kentucky Home before the race. It's a very emotional moment. People wager hundreds of millions of dollars on the race each year. So this is what I'm talking about with consumerism. There's a lot of money thrown at the game. One lucky bettor once turned a small bet into over $1 million. That doesn't happen for most people, but you see the appeal. There's also some fashion involved. It's basically an unofficial competition for the most outrageous hat. Even if people are not attending Churchill Downs in person, they often have Derby parties in their homes and watch their Derby on television and make a big festive day out of it. It blends high-speed sport, Southern tradition, wild fashion, and big money drama all rolled into one. So there is definitely appeal. But let's take a look at why the Kentucky Derby and horse racing in general raises serious animal welfare and ethical concerns. A lot of people don't realize there is a high risk of injury and death. Racehorses are bred and trained for extreme speed, often pushing their bodies beyond their natural limits. Common injuries include broken legs, tendon and ligament damage, and catastrophic musculoskeletal injuries. Unfortunately, if a horse sustains a severe injury during the race, euthanasia is the outcome, because recovery for these large animals is likely impossible. A horse that breaks its leg cannot recover, so they have to put it down right there on the spot. There's intensive training and overexertion. So they're trained from a young age, starting as yearlings at like 1 or 2 years old. Early and intense training can cause long-term physical damage and stress on their developing bones and joints. There's also the use of performance-enhancing drugs. So some trainers administer stimulants, painkillers, anti-inflammatory drugs to keep the horses racing despite injuries or pain. And those drugs can mask the injuries, which just leads to more severe problems and increased suffering. After their racing days, many horses are sent to slaughter or neglected, especially if they're not valuable for breeding. Even those retired racehorses may face uncertain futures, reflecting a lack of long-term welfare planning. So because they are used with the intention of being money makers, once they can no longer make somebody profit, they are put out to pasture, literally. But in a lot of cases, they're not put out to pasture. Sadly, they don't get to roam free. They are sent to slaughter or neglected. Racehorses are often confined in stalls for most of their days, which limits their behaviors like grazing, socializing, roaming. How are people supporting this unethical practice? By attending races or betting, consumers indirectly support an industry that prioritizes profit over animal welfare. Ethical consumption emphasizing reducing harm to animals. That's what it's all about. The racing involves risk, forced performance, premature death. Even organizations like PETA and the Humane Society advise against supporting horse racing. On the topic of horses, what about those horse carriages? Horse-drawn carriages raise animal welfare concerns too, and a lot of places have banned them because the key concerns include hard surfaces and traffic. Horses can walk long hours on pavement that damages their hooves and joints, contributing to pain and injury. The noise and pollution, the exposure to traffic and vehicle exhaust can cause stress and respiratory problems on the horses. And the weather extremes, working in very hot, cold, or humid conditions, increases their health risks. The Animal Welfare Institute, AWI, argues that no amount of regulation can fully mitigate these inherent welfare issues in busy city environments. So what are cities doing about it? Thankfully, there are reforms, bans, and alternatives. Cities phasing out or banning horse carriage rides would include Chicago, Montreal, Malaga, Spain, Spain, and Cartagena, Colombia. There, they replaced traditional horse buggies with electric carriages that mimic the historic look without the animal labor. In New York City, there's been a significant ongoing policy debate. There are mayors that have called for the end of horse-drawn carriage rides, and animal welfare advocates and many local residents support the phase-out, while carriage drivers advocate for preserving tradition and their livelihoods. As we become more aware nowadays of the concerns and more empathetic and compassionate towards our animal friends, thankfully, the majority of people are supporting the bans because they don't see the necessity. It's just not something we need to keep practicing. If you go somewhere where there are still horse carriage rides being offered, simply do not participate in that type of activity because now you know the harm it causes. Moving on to rodeos and bullfighting. We'll start with bullfighting, and that traces back to thousands of years ago with roots in ancient rituals honoring bulls as powerful, almost sacred animals. And it came from Spain during the 18th century. It became deeply embedded in Spanish culture and spread to countries like Mexico, Portugal, and parts of South America, whereas rodeos grew out of cattle ranching traditions in the American West during the 1800s. Cowboys wanted to compete to show off their skills like roping, riding, and wrangling, and that eventually turned into organized events. Today, rodeos are still a major part of Western heritage festivals across the US and Canada. So as you can see, a common theme here has been like tradition, tradition, tradition. People don't want to give up their traditions, and I can see the appeal. You can probably see the appeal, but we know as mindful people that it's just not worth it. We are living in modern times now where awareness and information has made us more likely to empathize with the animals, knowing that they are feeling pain, they are being harmed, and they're suffering, and we no longer want to support that regardless of how long the activity has been going on and how much other people might enjoy maintaining that tradition. In bullfighting, the bull is almost always killed at the end. With bullfighting, the matador risks death every time. Bulls can and do kill humans. Around 15,000 bulls are killed annually in bullfighting worldwide. And the bull is weakened beforehand, which is a controversial practice involving lances. Bulls used in rodeos can weigh over 2,000 pounds and can spin faster than you'd expect something that size could. Riders must stay on for exactly 8 seconds, which sounds short, but it's very difficult. Injuries are common. Bull riding is often called the most dangerous 8 seconds in sports. Rodeos are criticized too, though defenders argue animals are not killed and are often well cared for. But public opinion is shifting, especially among younger generations, because they can say they're well cared for, but they're still being exploited. Bullfighting is more like a ritualized, dramatic spectacle rooted in tradition and symbolism. Rodeos are competitive, skill-based events tied to ranch life, but both involve danger and powerful animals and tell very different cultural stories. There's also the Spanish running of the bulls. It's a festival event where bulls are released to run through town streets, most famously in Pamplona during San Fermin. Participants run ahead of them, and the concerns with the bulls here is that they experience high stress, fear, and risk of injuries. Some bulls are later used in bullfights, linking it to fatal outcomes, and there's incidents of injury to humans, so it's very dangerous, and it also creates panic attacks and accidents in the animals. Increasing public awareness has led to bans, restrictions, and modifications in several countries. Spain, Portugal, and parts of Latin America are seeing youth movements against bullfighting and violent festivals. So that is some positive news, and rodeos in North America face pressure to adopt welfare-certified practices or alternatives. Tourism and entertainment industries are exploring animal-free alternatives like mechanical rodeos, virtual reality experiences, or cultural exhibitions. Cultural shifts and alternative entertainment methods are helping to reduce harm in this case. Moving on to exotic animal tourism. If you have traveled, then you might have seen some activities and some entertainment involving elephants, lions, different exotic creatures. You might have seen other people on social media posting photos, petting a tiger, or holding a python, something of that nature. Exotic animal tourism is one of those things that feels magical on the surface, but gets complicated the deeper you go. So let's unpack it. A short history of exotic animal tourism. Humans have been fascinated by exotic animals for thousands of years. In ancient times, you had rulers like Cleopatra and Julius Caesar ruler who kept rare animals as status symbols. So lions, elephants, even giraffes were shipped across continents. Fast forward to the colonial era, European explorers brought back tales and sometimes animals from Africa, Asia, and the Americas, which led to the rise of zoos, circuses, and traveling menageries. By the 20th century, tourism turned animals into attractions: safaris, dolphin shows, elephant rides. Today, the industry is massive and controversial. What is exotic animal tourism? It's travel centered around interacting with or observing animals that are not native to your everyday environment. Riding elephants in Thailand, swimming with dolphins in Mexico, taking selfies with tigers, visiting safari parks in Africa, holding sloths, or feeding giraffes. It sounds really cool and really fun. Sometimes it is, and sometimes not so much. A tiger pacing the same 10-foot path over and over, an elephant with tired eyes giving rides all day, and a drugged out lion cub being passed between tourists for photos. And just to give you some insight onto how unique these creatures really are and their intelligence, dolphins have names for each other, so basically built-in contact lists, and elephants can smell water from miles away. Many tiger cubs used for those photos are sadly separated from their mothers shortly after birth so that they stay manageable. Elephants used for rides are often trained using a method called the crush, which involves physical restraint and pain. And some of those sanctuaries, quote unquote, are actually disguised entertainment businesses. Wildlife selfies have been linked to increased illegal animal trade. So one particularly eye-opening example is the treatment of captive elephants, which has been studied by organizations like the World Animal Protection. Have you seen places like this? When I was in Southeast Asia visiting Thailand especially, there were a lot of tourists interested in going out and riding elephants or taking pictures with them or seeing them or swimming with them, whatever. Some of them claimed to be sanctuaries and others it was kind of questionable, and I just did not participate in any of that. I already knew the dark side of that industry. So yeah, I went to Thailand and did not see one elephant, but I'm totally okay with that because I feel better as a responsible, compassionate tourist who just knows better. And I'm not going to financially support that industry that keeps it going and going and going. Not all exotic animal tourism is bad. It ranges from harmful to somewhat beneficial. So the problematic experiences are going to be direct contact, hugging, riding, selfies, or performances like circuses and tricks, or animals in unnatural environments. More responsible experiences could be observing animals in the wild, like safaris, or visiting true rescue sanctuaries, supporting conservation programs. And for instance, a well-run safari in places like the Serengeti National Park can actually help protect ecosystems. So do some research if you're traveling before you become one of these tourists who is naive and puts up blinders to the dark industry. Humans are wired to connect with animals, and seeing a lion up close or locking eyes with a gorilla can feel very, very special, maybe even spiritual. But the closer and more interactive the experience, the more likely it involves animal compromise. Thankfully now, the industry is shifting. There's more awareness on ethical travel. Social media is exposing harmful practices. So yeah, everyone's taking photos, trying to show off to their friends and the rest of the world, like, look at me, I'm with this exotic animal in Asia or Africa. And it might seem impressive on social media, but thankfully social media, the positive flip side is that it does expose harmful practices. Travelers today have more power than ever. Your choices literally do shape the industry. In conclusion, exotic animal tourism sits at the intersection of wonder and responsibility. It can either protect wildlife or exploit it. Moving on to circuses. The circus is one of humanity's most colorful, chaotic, and enduring forms of entertainment. The modern circus as we know it began in 1768 with a former cavalry officer in England. He created the circular arena that is still used today to showcase trick horse riding. But soon, acrobats, clowns, and performers joined in, turning it into a full spectacle. By By the 19th century, we had traveling circuses, which exploded in popularity, especially in the US, with massive shows like the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus, which were famously dubbed the greatest show on earth. Traditional circuses often featured elephants, lions, and tigers. Over time, concerns about animal welfare led many modern circuses to eliminate animal acts entirely. And today's circus has evolved dramatically. We have companies like Cirque du Soleil, which have totally reinvented the experience. This is an example of progression and a great alternative that is still like this crazy spectacle that's very impressive, that involves no animals. It's more about storytelling and art, and there's stunning lighting, music, and choreography. It is so great that things like the Cirque du Soleil exist because traditional circuses are problematic for animal welfare. Obviously, unnatural living conditions. Elephants, tigers, primates, they were kept in tiny transport-ready enclosures that don't meet physical or psychological needs. They rarely got proper space, enrichment, or social interaction. And when it came to training, the methods used, many animal acts relied on coercive training using whips, bull hooks, chains, negative reinforcement, and deprivation to force animals into unnatural behaviors. What comes to my mind is the elephant balancing on the little ball and going up on their back legs and doing all those tricks. It's just so sad in hindsight. As a kid, it was super impressive. I actually really loved clowns. I was not afraid of them like most of the population is. I was a total sucker for the circus. I loved it. I ate that right up. I loved seeing the animals. It was just like super impressive. But as a kid especially, you're very unaware of that animal mistreatment. You don't even realize that the animals are living in such unnatural conditions and doing these unnatural things so far away from where they originated, and they are not living their natural lives. Also, let's consider the loud crowds and cheering. The constant upheaval is really concerning for the animals' basic welfare and causes a lot of stress and abnormal behaviors like pacing, even leading to health problems. Research and animal protection groups widely conclude that traditional circuses are inherently unsuitable for animal welfare. Here is some progression. In terms of legislative and policy shifts worldwide, in the UK, the Wild Animals in Circus Act 2019 bans the use of wild animals in traveling circuses in England and Wales, following similar action in Scotland. And over 40 countries worldwide now have regulated or banned wild animal performances. In the US, while a federal ban has not passed, many states and localities have restricted or prohibited wild animal exhibits and traveling shows, which does include elephants and big cats. These laws reflect both public demand and scientific concern about the animal's welfare. Here are some other alternatives. There's a strong trend toward entertainment without animals, focusing instead on human artistry. So as I mentioned, human circuses, sounds funny, like the Cirque du Soleil, have become globally celebrated for their acrobats, aerial acts, storytelling, and creativity, proving a circus does not need animals to thrive. And honestly, I would rather see acrobats. Like, I'm really into that. I'd rather see humans who are there showing off their skills and their talents, and they're profiting off of it and making money. It's a win-win. No one's being exploited. They're there at their own volition. Many traditional circuses have dropped animals entirely, so that would be something, or they've significantly reduced animal involvement in favor of acrobats, aerial artists, clowns, dancers, and tech-enhanced effects. I know in Germany, I recently saw an article that said that they had banned elephants at the very least and instead replaced it with some type of light performance show, which was still depicting an elephant figure, but it was impressive. I don't know if they were using drones or something like that, but it was more like a light show using these technology enhanced effects instead. And some producers explore holograms and digital projections. There are sanctuaries and rescues. Rescued circus animals are often relocated to sanctuaries where they can live in more natural settings with proper veterinary care and plenty of space. Surveys are showing growing opposition to animal performances as people start to understand more about animal needs. Audiences increasingly prefer ethical forms of entertainment that celebrate human skill instead of animal performance. And animal welfare groups continue to build pressure for stronger laws and enforcement. So if you're trying to think of something to do where you want to go visit animals and you want to see it as an educational experience, especially if you have a family and kids, animal sanctuaries are designed provide safe havens where animals can live out their lives in peace. Truly ethical place usually rescues animals. They don't breed them or buy them. They give animals lifelong care instead of selling or trading them, and they don't force animals to perform or interact. It allows animals to choose whether to engage with visitors or not, and it focuses on education, not entertainment. There are some great ethical sanctuaries you can visit in the U.S. Best Friends Animal Sanctuary is located in Utah. It's one of the largest in the U.S., and it's home to around 1,600 rescued animals. Visitors can take tours, volunteer, and learn humane care. It focuses on a no-kill movement. There is Black Beauty Ranch in Texas, which is a huge sanctuary with rescued domestic and exotic animals. There are other farm sanctuaries, very family-friendly. Poplar Spring Animal Sanctuary, they offer scheduled tours for visitors. Saving Grace Animal Sanctuary, they have cows, pigs, goats rescued from agriculture, and they focus on giving animals peaceful, lifelong homes. Wildlife and exotic rescues, they're ethical if they're done right. There's one called Safe Haven Wildlife Sanctuary. They rescue those exotic animals that just can't return to the wild, and they offer some guided tours. So ethical wildlife sanctuaries are not going to allow petting or direct handling with the wild animals. And places to avoid, even if they do look fun, would be roadside zoos, places offering tiger cub selfies, elephant rides, dolphin shows, or facilities that breed animals or sell them. Make sure you ask yourself, where did the animals come from? Can they leave or be reintroduced to nature? Are interactions optional for the animals? Are they accredited by groups like the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries, GFAS? So go ahead and check out, Google some guided sanctuary tours, wildlife rehab centers that are observation only, farm sanctuaries with educational visits, and even volunteer days. Older kids and teens can also participate in that. So that about wraps up our episode for today's podcast, all about animal entertainment. Maybe something you didn't really consider before as an ethical consumer, but even our activities, our time, our money, whatever we're spending our money on does count as consumerism, even if it's not a physical object, rather an event, a show, a performance, or an experience. So just think before you quickly buy tickets to something. It's great to ask ourselves these questions before we support an industry that could be contributing to animal suffering and harm. I hope you learned something new today and it was not entirely depressing. I know it's a very dark subject, obviously, but it's all about being aware because these are issues we care about. And thankfully, there is progress being made and there are alternatives available. So be sure to join me next time on the next podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow, whatever on social media, and tune in next time. Thanks for listening.